2 first-round buys for the SEC and a potential 14-team playoff. What are we even doing now? Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. This episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them out today at nissanusa.com. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, we got to dive into it. We've talked so much about hypotheticals with future playoffs, future, moving transfer portal dates, adding another recruiting period. I mean, this has been the offseason of just like crazy ass discussions with everything around the college football world. And so what's another one, as our buddy Ross Dellenger puts out there the other night that over at Yahoo Sports, that a day after news emerged that a proposed new model is going to be coming to the expanded college football playoff, possibly going to a 14-team field. There's talk that champions of the SEC and Big Ten would hold exclusive rights on 2 first-round buys, according to one version of a plan that's being circulated around among college athletic administrators. The version has not been finalized and is only being discussed, according to Dellenger, but he says such a concept would guarantee buys for the Big Ten and SEC, and it's an unusual but somewhat expected maneuver from the 2 biggest conferences. He said it's also a move that has garnered pushback from administrators from other conferences. Go figure. But here's what he says. In a 14-team model that they're discussing, the Big Ten and SEC would each receive 3 automatic qualifiers, with the ACC and Big 12 getting 2 each, and the group of 5's best team qualifying as well. And then that would leave 3 at-large spots. So Big 10 and SEC each get 3 teams in no matter what. ACC and Big 12 both get 2 teams in. Group of 5, like your Liberty from last year, they get in. And then 3 at-large spots. And that opens the door for Notre Dame and whoever else. But Dellenger says the model calls for the top 2 seeds to have buys into the second round under the 12-team format that will be used this fall. The 4 highest-ranked conference champions get a bye. But he said in the 14-team version, the ACC and Big 12 would not have access to obtaining a bye. Only the highest-ranked SEC and Big 10 teams would get the bye. He said it's an unprecedented move and perhaps a tipping point for some of those administrators in those leagues, right? If you're running the ACC or you're running the Big 12, you're not only saying no to this, but hell no. Dellenger goes on to say the seeding and pairings of a 14-team bracket is expected to operate in a similar way to the current structure, where you would have seeds 1 through 14, and then you would have a pair of 6 first-round games. So 8 would play 9, 7 would play 10, so on and so forth. But he said administrators caution that model could change as well. Commissioners are expected to meet virtually over the next week to begin further examining the format. But look, college football leaders are in a race against time here. They're trying to extend this new TV contract with ESPN, which of course expires in 2025. But they want to add changes for 2026. And officials need to agree on the new revenue distribution model, where the SEC and Big Ten are asking for more than everybody else because they have the best teams. And so a lot of questions are really arising from this, particularly on social media, as you would figure. A lot of people throwing out there, they're not big fans of this. And the thought has been brought up, how about rust? I mean, if you're a team that gets 2 buys, you're sitting out 2 weeks of games, you're going to get rusty. I mean, there's that thing in the NFL where, teams that get the bye, rest versus rust. And, it's a real discussion for a lot of folks. So a few other tweets I saw out there. One said, we can't even play a single season with 12 teams before arguing about 14. Another one said, not going to lie, it feels very weird to be in one of these conferences that try to pull these shenanigans on everybody else. Another tweet said, TV executives who don't care at all about college football are ruining the sport we love so they can add a second wing onto their summer homes. It's jarring. I mean, all this stuff we've discussed, big changes, and the SEC seems to be, if I could say, maybe a little greedy here. And our buddy Chris Marler kind of said this as well, and I kind of agree with him. Like, look, the SEC has always kind of been our favorite conference, and we root for, it's the best conference and the best teams and all this, but it feels kind of like they're being bullies here. And the major pushback by the SEC and the Big Ten here kind of makes me wonder if they're trying to sabotage this thing, blow the whole thing up so they can exit the umbrella of the NCAA and go create their own thing. This has been discussed that, the SEC and Big Ten kind of having this little alliance together. They could go create their own 36-team league, play each other, crown their own champion. And obviously that would then evolve into, maybe pulling some of the other big dogs from the ACC and Big 12 over and create a 40 to 50 team Power 2. Again, this is all just kind of hyperbolic, but it is certainly worth bringing up. Because, man, it's pushing the envelope. Like, I'm with the guy who said, can we at least play a 12-team playoff to see how this works first before we start going to 14 and then start arguing we deserve 3 guaranteed teams in no matter what. And, hey, we should get 2 buys. And, it's a mess. It's a mess. So, look, we'll see what happens as the discussions continue on. I think a lot of this stuff is ideas that will get shot down, but again, how serious is Greg Sankey and the Big Ten, for that matter, in holding firm to some of these ideas? Be interesting to see. In other SEC news, hey, the SEC did announce their schedule for 2024 football media days yesterday. They announced the schedule for all the coaches. It'll take place this summer, July 15th through the 18th in downtown Dallas, Texas, formerly Big 12 turf. SEC pushing them out. But Monday, July 15th, it will be Brian Kelly, Lane Kiffin, Shane Beamer, Clark Lee. Tuesday will be Kirby Smart, Eli Drinkwitz, Brent Venables, and Josh Heupel. That Wednesday, how about a day there? Kalen DeBoer and Steve Sarkisian, Bama's coach and Texas's coach, with Billy Napier and Jeff Lebby. And then the last day on Thursday will be Sam Pittman, Hugh Freeze, Mark Stoops, and Mike Elko. My overall takeaways here, just kind of when it first got announced, I said, first off, that looks weird as hell to see the SEC media days in Dallas, Texas. Never really thought of Dallas as SEC country, but it is now. Let's all get used to it. The other weird thing I saw was seeing a different name next to Alabama. When you read Alabama head coach and it's not Nick Saban, it still feels weird on paper, especially from an official release from the SEC, but we'll get used to Kalen DeBoer. And then the other weirdness, just seeing Oklahoma and Texas in there, and Brent Venables and Steve Sarkisian taking part in SEC media days. I know it's a time of change. It's all new. It's weird. It feels weird. We're going to have to get used to it, but I wish we could maybe slow down some of the newness. Like, let's experience Texas and Oklahoma first. Let's experience all this newness for the first time before we start rushing and making huge sweeping changes to college football as we know it. But look, it's all about money, and those decision makers are the ones making all this happen. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we are going to get you caught up on all the latest news going on around the conference, little tidbits here and there. So we will do that coming up in just a second. More Locked On SEC right after this. First, I want to remind you guys, this episode presented to you by our friends over at Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? You ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. First up, it's the 2024 Nissan Rogue, perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built-in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone, Google Assistant, Google Maps, and the Google Play Store are built right into that 12.3-inch HD touchscreen system right there on your dashboard. And the 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. And Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the Nissan Pathfinder. The 2024 has room up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability with the 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing when adventure calls. The Pathfinder is there to answer. Go take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. All right, roll along here. Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Shout out to our everydayers. And we start over at Alabama's. Kalen DeBoer is starting things off on the right foot with the Alabama media. They are going to get to full access to Alabama's practices here coming up for spring practice, and they're going to get to talk with Alabama assistant coaches. That's right. Kalen DeBoer is making Alabama assistant coaches available to speak to the media and will give the press some access to the 15 spring practices. Nick Saban, of course, always kind of limited media when it came to the availability, but DeBoer is going to open things up for his first spring practice and maybe try to get in a little bit good with the media there and harness a good relationship. But an interesting approach for Kalen DeBoer there. Things are very different at Alabama these days. One other thing, at his former stop with the Washington Huskies, one of his former players, Emeka Megwa, a running back, has filed a civil lawsuit, according to the Seattle Times, against the school. He is seeking damages for medical negligence. He played for Washington from 2021 to 2022 under Kalen DeBoer. And according to the Seattle Times, he's seeking damages from the current and former members of the school's medicine staff, football coaching staff, athletic trainers, and physical therapists. In total, 9 current and former staffers are named in the lawsuit. And this relates to his rehab from an ACL injury that he claims resulted in having to have a second ACL injury. But his attorney says the main thing he wants is to prevent this from happening to other student athletes. So kind of a little bit of a black eye there to Kalen DeBoer. Of course, we don't know how responsible he or how much he's on the hook for anything in this lawsuit, but we will see on that. All right, over at Auburn, Hugh Freeze going through Auburn's spring practices already, and Hugh Freeze talking with the media yesterday, said he's felt a void being on the latest SEC coaches meeting and looking for somebody to step up. He said in our most recent SEC head coaches meeting, there wasn't a guy that was willing to yell and scream as much as Nick Saban since he retired. He said we got to find out who that guy is going to be. I think it's going to be Kirby Smart. Comes a little bit more natural to him. When we don't like something, we always kind of depend on Nick to voice that in a forceful manner for us. He said, so I think that's going to be Kirby moving forward. But as for the quarterback race over there at Auburn, Hugh Freeze said he has got a 4-man battle going on between Peyton Thorne, Holden Geriner, redshirt freshman Hank Brown, and true freshman Walker White. Freeze saying the hardest thing is when you got 4 guys you want to get looks at is getting them all quality reps. We would chart every single rep, individual, every single rep on footwork. I got a team of 3 guys that are charged of doing that, watching their decision-making, execution, and just getting them all quality reps. He said, obviously, you're going to get really good looks at Peyton Thorne and Holden and Hank, and then you want to get Walker some too because he's super talented. But Hugh Freeze saying it's open competition there at quarterback. But look, it's got to be Peyton. It's Peyton Thorne's job to lose. He was the guy last year, but still looking for that Peyton Thorne that was oh so good at Michigan State a couple years ago. Needs to get back to that Peyton Thorne. Over to LSU, Brian Kelly making some headlines this week in an interview where he revealed that star linebacker Harold Perkins is going to move back to linebacker again this season. He did that last offseason at LSU. Former edge rusher moved to inside linebacker, struggled to adapt to that position, so they eventually kind of moved him back to edge rusher last season, but Brian Kelly says they're going to move him back to the middle of the defense again this year. And Bud Elliott, 24/7 Sports, says he thinks it's a positive move. He said Perkins tried to play linebacker, didn't do a very good job of it. But the thing is, if he's going to go to the NFL and be a high draft pick, he's not an edge rusher at 6'1", 220 pounds. He's got to learn to play linebacker and play it well. LSU will still use him as a pass rusher at times, but he's probably going to have to do so from the linebacker spot if he wants to make real money in the NFL. Again, that's Bud Elliott's thoughts. So something interesting to watch throughout spring ball for LSU. How does Harold Perkins develop as that true linebacker? Over at Texas, the NFL Combine going up in Indianapolis, and former Texas tight end JT Sanders, with a strong message on the Big 12 exit from the SEC. He said, quote, "It was fun playing in the Big 12. The Big 12 is one of those conferences where anybody can beat anybody. But I'm glad Texas and Oklahoma are going to the SEC. Now we can assert true dominance." A little hard to read the messaging there from Mr. Sanders, but is he saying that it's going to be easier for Texas and OU in the SEC than it was in the Big 12? I think he's got it flipped around when he says anybody can beat anybody in the Big 12. We'll check back in when Texas loses to the Mississippi States and Arkansas or whoever, insert team here. Not the smartest of lines there, but hey, JT's off to the NFL, so he doesn't have to worry about answering to those comments. Over still at Texas, sticking with Texas, Nick Saban obviously announced his retirement this offseason, and a lot of folks linked Steve Sarkisian to that job, but Sark speaking this week saying there was never going to be a world where he left Texas for Alabama. He said he believes they're making something special at Texas and wants to build his own legacy there. Sark went on to say the speculation and outside world, I think it was just all that. We were in the process of developing and getting my new contract done. I think we're just on the cusp of doing something really special here at Texas. So Sark saying was never going to Alabama. Didn't even entertain the idea. Over at Texas A&M, they're picking up a former Florida staffer as Florida's seen a lot of changes in recent days. But off-field staffer Joe Hamilton leaving the Gators for Texas A&M. According to a report, he has served as Florida's Director of Scouting and Recruiting Relations, in addition to being an NFL liaison for the program, and was a big reason why Florida was able to bring in quarterback signee DJ Lagway. Hamilton was on Billy Napier's inaugural staff at Florida. He was promoted to Assistant Director of Player Personnel prior to this past season. So Joe Hamilton going over there to join the Aggies. Big get for them. One other note on A&M, Sam McCall, defensive back who transferred into College Station. He is on the move again. Joined the Aggies from Florida State last offseason, but he is going to hit the transfer portal, left 2 years of eligibility remaining. And there you have it. That's the latest news going on around the conference. Still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every single day. I'll remind you guys, this episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Get your buckets on with your first bet at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Get in all the action on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, and exclusive props. It is FanDuel.com/lockedon. You want to make sure you put in that website, FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's what's going to get you the special $150 offer with any winning $5 bet. Again, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go shoot your shot today. They are FanDuel. They're the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Sign up there, FanDuel.com/lockedon. Then go download the app and check them out every single day. And you will have a lot of fun getting in on all the NBA action, future college football, college basketball. All of it's up there for you at FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, run along here to Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. I want to dive into this as the first year of Texas and Oklahoma coming over to the SEC. We gave you FanDuel's early betting lines for the SEC championship. A few other books are coming out with one, so wanted to bring you guys some of the odds out there. But FanDuel, they have put out their SEC championship game betting lines. So we'll dive into this and see if you guys see any good odds you want to jump in on here. But Vanderbilt plus 50,000 to win the SEC. Vanderbilt, obviously, long shot to win the conference this year, but they did land a couple of big transfer portal pieces in quarterbacks Nate Johnson and Diego Pavia. So we'll see if Vandy needs to just win a SEC game this year. That would be a step forward for them. Over at Mississippi State, Jeff Lebby coming in. He's got his work cut out for him. FanDuel's got the Bulldogs as plus 20,000 to win the SEC this year. Again, same thing with them. Blake Shapen coming in through the transfer portal. They got to rebuild there. Another long shot. Next up on the list, the Arkansas Razorbacks plus 15,000. Sam Pittman, man, a couple of years ago looked like he had this thing on the right path and they were going to be a viable competitor in the conference. But losing KJ Jefferson, losing Rocket Sanders, having to rebuild this thing again, don't feel good about Arkansas's chances there. Next up on the long shots, Florida plus 11,000. We know how brutal this schedule is. Even with Graham Mertz coming back, it is a tough schedule for the Florida Gators once again in 2024. So Gators, if they can weather the storm, plus 11,000, get you some good value. Over at South Carolina, Shane Beamer and crew, they kind of underachieved last year, taking a little bit of a step back. They are plus 10,000 to win the SEC. They'll lose Spencer Radler, but a lot of people excited about Lenore Sellers at quarterback. He's going to have to be really good. South Carolina is going to vie for an SEC title this year. Over at Kentucky, here's where you get to, odds aren't as long, plus 9,000. So Kentucky Wildcats bringing in Brock Vandegrift from Georgia. They do lose Ray Davis, one of the best rushers in the SEC, but we'll see. I think Mark Stoops, maybe they get on a heater, but I don't know. 10-2, 11-1 is what it would take for them to get to the SEC championship game. That's just going to be really, really tough for Kentucky. Over at Auburn, plus 5,000. Starting to get into some more feasible odds here. Hugh Freeze with Peyton Thorne. Hoping he takes a big step forward this year in his production, but going to need Cam Coleman to go off and be one of the best receivers in the SEC. Over at Oklahoma, Brent Venables' crew, plus 4,000. First-year starter quarterback Jackson Arnold. Highly touted, but he's going to have to play his butt off if Oklahoma's going to weather their tricky road slate that has battles against Alabama and Tennessee. Mike Elko at Texas A&M, plus 2,000. Got a lot of five-star talent still on the roster and done a good job addressing a lot of needs in the transfer portal, but not the longest of odds there for the Aggies. They got some tough games against Notre Dame, LSU, and Missouri, but they do get Texas at home, and I think they're going to treat that game like their Super Bowl. Over at Missouri, they are plus 1,500 to win the SEC. They'll lose Cody Schrader. But they bring back Brady Cook and Luther Burden, one of the best quarterback to wide receiver duos in the SEC. They do lose their DC Blake Baker to LSU, but still a lot of talent on that Missouri roster. Next up, Tennessee. They've got them at plus 1,100. So this is where you get into 11-1, basically, is what we're looking at here. Nico Iamaleava, who a lot of people think that can take that big leap and have a monster year and maybe be in the Heisman conversation if all goes well there in Knoxville. But early season games against NC State and at Oklahoma. Then, of course, marquee matchups against Alabama and Georgia. That schedule is tough. But if you like Tennessee to win the SEC, plus 1,100. LSU, they are at plus 950. They mark the first of 5 SEC teams with under 1,000, odds. So basically these are all the under 10-1 odds. So these are all more likely to happen. But Brian Kelly entering year 3. Keep in mind the couple of previous head coaches, Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Ogeron. By year 3, they were all competing for a title. So Brian Kelly, can he do that this year with Garrett Nussmeier replacing the Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels? Over to Alabama, this is going to be the longest odds Bama's had in a while. Plus 950 for Alabama to win the SEC this year. Kalen DeBoer taking over. Still loaded with talent, but man, they lost a lot of key guys to the transfer portal and the draft. So got to retool, got to rebuild here. But some people thinking 10-2 is doable, but I don't know. Is that good enough to win the SEC? Plus 950 there for Bama. Now we get to some of the guys considered the favorites. Ole Miss plus 650 to win the SEC this year. Rebels' last conference title came 61 years ago, but they are coming off their best season in program history. Got a lot of key players coming back, including Jackson Dart. So Ole Miss certainly has a chance to win the SEC. And now we get to our two favorites, the two teams expected to go play for the SEC title in Atlanta, and one of the newcomers, Texas Longhorns, plus 300. They come in as an instant SEC contender, and Steve Sarkisian, high expectations with him bringing in one of the top quarterbacks in the nation back in Quinn Ewers. Got to retool that wide receiving core, got to develop chemistry with those new receivers, but if they do that, Texas is going to win a lot of games. And then, of course, the favorite to win the SEC, it is Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, plus 185. And a lot of people expecting them to get back on top here. And ding dong, the witch is dead. Nick Saban out of the conference now. Kirby Smart's toughest roadblock is out of the way. Ole Miss and Tennessee remain on their slate of games at Georgia, but really good chance with all the talent they have to possibly run the table. And there you have it. That's the latest odds there from FanDuel Sportsbook. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back on Monday and check us out. For your second listen, go check out Locked On's first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. I'm Chris Gordy. This has been Locked On SEC. We'll talk to you guys on Monday.